Hello, this is this dialogue. I'm Santayot Amrat with this edition. This edition will focus on the development of solar energy and the International Solar Alliance mission to Africa, as well as Indian experience in solar energy sector. Thank you so much for joining us, and my guest today is the Director General of the International Solar Alliance, His Excellency Mr. Ashish Khanna. Do stay tuned. And a very warm welcome to this dialogue, Mr. Ashish Khanna.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Well, today our discussion will focus on the significance of solar energy in boosting the economy as well as helping the agriculture sector. And in this regard, my first point would be, how is the International Solar Alliance?
So, International Solar Alliance was born in 2015 Paris COP, and it was formally set up in 2018. But within 7 years, it now has 124 countries as its members. And since it's a treaty-based organization, that means all of them are part of this global South-led multilateral, largest such multilateral coming out of global South. What are we really hoping to do? We are hoping to unlock the potential of solar, batteries, EVs in every country that can maximize the economic growth and job potential in those countries. Our targets are huge, to mobilize at least $1 trillion of investments and 1,000 gigawatts of solar across the world.
Thank you, nice explanation. And my next point is, what major achievements have you come across so far?
First of all, 124 countries as members reflects the new world where Global South wants to have a multilateral agency of their own. And what are our main achievements? Our main achievements are in terms of having policy and regulatory support that is helping all our countries. We have a global solar facility that is starting with an Africa solar facility, a facility to leverage a money, right, up to 20 to 30 times to get private sector to start investing. We have opened up 17 centers of excellence in countries which are called Solar Technology Application Resource Centers that are now building local capability for countries to find their own answers. We are also doing startups. We have done now 70 startups, 20 in Africa, 10 India, 20 Asia Pacific, and now 20 in Latin America, who are young people coming up with their innovative ideas on how to disrupt. Some of the startups are from Ethiopia.
What's your evaluation about the progress you have seen so far due to your intervention in Africa?
Countries are rapidly expanding solar for economics. Solar has led to almost 70% reduction in cost over last 10 years. Now, batteries are also seeing similar reduction. $2.2 trillion were invested in clean technology last year, which was much more than the world invested in fossil fuels. Now, that itself is a huge achievement because we are here facilitating these investments. The challenge we face is only 2% of that is coming to Africa. So we are now working on a lot of Africa-focused effort that how can we channelize a lot more investment coming to Africa. Africa needs energy more because 680 million Africans do not have energy access. And energy access is a matter of dignity. It's a right. You cannot have good health, good digitization, good schools if you don't have energy. And those who have energy often have it very expensive in Africa. And solar is cheaper, it's cleaner, and can democratize by a lot of people having their own solar energy as well. So it's a great mode of equality and for sustainable economic growth.
Well, would you please tell us the major ISA mission to Africa?
So we have 4 pillars on which we want to help Africa. The first starts with, why is private sector not investing in Africa? That requires 2-pronged approach. First, to work on policy and regulations in African countries that will facilitate a lot of private sector investment. Second, sometimes there's a perception of a risk that Africa is very risky. So we have created an Africa Solar Facility with one of the Africa's own agencies, Africa 50, which is co-owned by 34 governments as a fund manager, to promote private sector to invest in distributed renewable energy, like solar mini-grid, solar rooftops, and that will allow a lot of private sector to get some risk support to invest. So that's about the first pillar on getting private sector to invest in Africa. The second pillar is how do we build capability within Africa to take charge of their own agenda. For that, as I mentioned, we have 17 centers of excellence. The first one was set up in Ethiopia, in University of Addis Ababa. Now these centers, what do? They train people, because this is about new jobs, green skills. This is the future. So we train people so that they can have jobs on solar. We help startups have youth and incubation. There is some research and development that happens in StarC. Now we are connecting them to a global capability center in India so that the latest digital and artificial intelligence solutions can also be given to Africa, because Africa should not be left behind. They must have digital leapfrogging along with energy. That's a second pillar. The third pillar is that in few countries, and Ethiopia is one of the only first one that we are here, we are going to have a country partnership framework that we signed with the government yesterday that will now come out with a very clear milestones over the next 3 to 5 years, how we are going to work together in having projects, in having policies, in having all the capabilities so that real projects can happen. For example, Ethiopia still has too many diesel pumps that are now too expensive given the cost of diesel. Solar pumps now can do the same job at 1/4 the cost, only 25%. We will like to work with government of Ethiopia. What would a program of doing solarization of pumps, cold storage, that help productivity improvement in agriculture and provide green jobs in agriculture. So that is going to be one of our big focus areas for country partnership framework. As I mentioned, that is a third pillar. The fourth and final pillar is on technology policy. Ethiopia has majority of its people, if I'm not mistaken, more than 70% of people dependent on agriculture. Sure. And therefore, those people must see the benefits of growth. Now, what solar can help is, first of all, you need to have a lot of irrigation. In some of the African countries I worked, when I look at only 6%, 10% of land as irrigated, that is just not right. In India, 75% of land is irrigated. That's how farmers grow 2 crops, 3 crops, and get a lot of income. Secondly, if they are using diesel pumps for groundwater extraction, that is going to be very expensive, where solar pump with right maintenance and spare parts is going to be only 25% cost. But often, farmers don't know that the cost of solar pumps and batteries has come down so much. So there is a communication, having the right technical standards, because if you import or get something that is not of a good technical quality, it may not work in 2-3 years, and you may feel, oh, it was a mistake in doing solar. The mistake is not having the right technical standards and not having the spare parts and the maintenance contracts. So the third part is, solar can now help in a supply chain on different parts. Like we were just discussing in a panel, in a dairy, right from fodder to the final product, there are different solar applications in the industry that can increase the productivity and enhance income. So those are various ways by which you are having technology that is enhancing income, bringing livelihoods, better for the climate and better for country's future.
Dear viewers, you are watching this dialogue, and this dialogue will focus on the significance of solar energy. And my conversation today is with the International Solar Alliance Director General, Mr. Ashish Khanna. Thank you so much for joining us again. Well, now let's move on to the Indian experience. And could you please share with us the Indian experience in achieving some milestones in the solar energy development sector?
So India has now done more than 2 million solar pumps, because India is realizing that rather than farmers having diesel or having grid-connected electricity that requires long transmission and distribution lines to take that power. It is much cheaper for farmers to get solar pumps in doing. The second thing that India is doing is, even though wherever some grid exists, it might be useful to have a solar-based small system of 200 kilowatts, 300 kilowatts to supply to a group of farmers rather than doing long transmission lines of 50, 100 kilometers that are very expensive. And as I mentioned, in the different supply chains, whether you're a rice mill, whether you are in Injera, say in case of Ethiopia, or dairy, there are different applications that are coming. What is interesting is it's not only about solar, it is about an ecosystem. Ecosystem will require right financing product, because the banks in Ethiopia will need to feel comfortable in lending to farmers and those applications. You need people who are aware of how to do tendering of these solar products, how to maintain them, how to get spare parts. So there's a lot of capacity building that is really needed. And then finally, most of it all over the world is done by private sector, which means the private sector needs to build that capability. If they are doing 10 pumps today, I feel in Ethiopia they should be doing 10,000 pumps in 2 years from now. So we are very keen to bring all that experience from India and other places in Ethiopia to create that ecosystem that can benefit hope and a lot of income to rural people. From having almost no capacity 11 years back, India now has 115 gigawatts of solar power, making it world's third largest solar market, which means investments of $150 billion plus have already happened. In just 10 years, I would like, in 10 years from now, Africa to have the same figure, because that is what economic growth can do. Let me again say why it is important for economic growth of Africa. There are countries in Africa which are still dependent on heavy fuel oil and diesel-based generation, not only for individual farmers in agriculture, but for the system as a whole, that cost as much as 25 US cents. And that is why the tariffs in Africa are one of the highest in most countries. So either people do not have power or they have very expensive power. Both need to be addressed. People need to be given power, and those who have power should make it more affordable and reliable. Solar can do that, looking at the example of India, because the solar prices now all over the world are, as I mentioned, 1/4 of fossil fuels. So imagine how much countries can save. Now on your question on agriculture, if you have more irrigated area, in India on an average upwards of 80% of area that can be irrigated already has irrigation. If that figure is only 6 or 8% in Africa, imagine you have a potential for 8 times more area to be irrigated. And then it's not only about the amount of land that is now available for irrigation, it's also about productivity of that land. Where if you have solar-based pumping, you have cold storage, 30% of food often is wasted. Cold storage done right way can reduce the wastage of food products. It can also help agri-processing and agri-exports, because that can also increase. I mean, I would like to know a little bit more how we can help the coffee industry of Ethiopia, being the pride of Ethiopia, develop and use solar to reduce the cost by getting out of diesel, but also use other aspects to increase productivity. That, I think, is the nature of enhancing productivity through solar.
Then what is your take on Ethiopia's status in the solar energy sector?
I think this is something, I'm here because this is a promise. It's largely an unutilized promise. Ethiopia has, because of its land and closeness to the equator, enormous solar potential. But less than 10 megawatts is there. That means that the future is so bright if we can do it the right way. And I repeat, the right way, would require a lot of things to be done. Right policy, right banking instrument, right capability building locally, and right technical specifications, and making sure people on the ground can find what they want. Whether you are a consumer can have a solar rooftop, a farmer can find a solar pump, including spares and maintenance. That's the potential that exists.
Well, finally, with this latest travel to Ethiopia, what have you done so far with respected government officials?
So, as you would have seen, we have signed a couple of agreements yesterday. First is a country partnership framework, because if Ethiopia doesn't move ahead, Africa cannot move ahead. So this is the first country partnership framework we have done in Africa, which will now be working over the next 3 to 6 months to come out with detailed projects. Once those detailed projects on agriculture applications for solar pumps, for rooftops, for mini grids, and we have also signed an intent to do the first large 400 megawatt utility scale grid connected solar. Why that is important? Because you can get large private sector investments. I think after the difficult reforms Ethiopia has done, the country is ready to attract large-scale private investments, and solar is just the right sector. These are the areas we hope to come to more detailed projects that will be ready. Then a country partnership strategy would be finalized. That process should take about 4 to 6 months. So before the end of the calendar year, we will identify what are the clear projects, and then we will start working on them.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ashish Khanna, for the wonderful explanations you have given us